Natural wine divides the wine community. While some love the authenticity and purity of it, others hate the flaws and the value signaling of its producers. I've tasted many natural wines that I like, but I also struggle with the communication of some natural wine producers. No wine is ever natural. Wine is always a cultural product made by people, so I already think the term itself is misleading. Additionally, the term is not clearly defined, and some producers might say they make natural wine, but no one controls their practices. So let's talk about natural wine while I go through a lineup of natural wines to see whether they are any good. In the 1970s, Beaujolais winemaker Marcel Lapierre became inspired by a neighbor, vigneron, négociant, and scientist Jules Chauvet. Lapierre wanted to move away from industrial viticulture and followed Chauvet's minimalist approach. Others joined the movement, namely Jean Foillard, Jean-Paul Thévenet, and Guy Breton, and they became known as the Gang of Four. This was the beginning of the natural wine movement, and today many producers all around the world have joined in. But what does natural wine actually mean? Isabelle Légeron, a master of wine and the founder of Raw Wine Fair, a wine fair that really focuses on natural wine, wrote the following text on the topic. While there is no universally accepted definition of natural wine, it is generally agreed to be wine that is farmed organically without adding or removing anything in the cellar, no additives or processing aids are used, and intervention in the naturally occurring fermentation process is kept to a minimum. As such, neither fining nor filtration are used. The result is a living wine, wholesome and full of naturally occurring microbiology. This may sound kind of great until you start thinking about it. Do you really want wine where nothing is being removed? Bits of leaves, stems, grape skins and pips most certainly have to be removed from the wine. And does this make the wine worse? Also, do you want a living wine if that means the wine might re-ferment or go through malolactic conversion in bottle? Just like the term natural wine, much of the messaging does not meet my standards for truthful communication. For example, the standards for showing your wines at the Raw Wine Fair are quite different to the definition of natural wine. You're not allowed to add any yeast unless you make a sparkling wine, and all of a sudden you're actually able to add yeast. You can also fine or filter your wine as long as you state that clearly on the label. And in extraordinary circumstances, you're even allowed to chaptalize or acidify your wine and still exhibit it at this natural wine fair. The most important topic when it comes to natural wine is sulfur. Many people in the natural wine movement think that sulfites are bad for humans or are bad for the quality of wine. And Raw Wine Fair sets the limit for sulfur in wine at 50 milligrams per liter, which is quite a bit lower than the maximum allowed for red wine or dry white wine. But it's really not that low. I mean, 50 milligrams per liter definitely suggests that you've added sulfites to the wine, which is something that you shouldn't do based on that definition. For me, this is just low intervention wine. And while I really like that approach, I don't think there's a difference whether a wine has 50 milligrams per liter of SO2 or 60 milligrams per liter. It's not more natural, that's for sure. But now let's dive into the wines and see whether natural wines deliver when it comes to taste and quality. So the first wine is the 2019 Thomas Niedermayr Bronner Hof Gandberg from the north of Italy. The winery is certified organic and the wine is spontaneously fermented, unfined and unfiltered. I didn't get any information on how much sulfites they use, but I've been told that they use low levels of sulfites. And that's part of the problem. We know how much alcohol the wine contains, how big the bottle is, but we don't get exact numbers on sulfites usually or oftentimes when it comes to natural wine. What I find quite interesting about this wine is that it's made using a hybrid grape variety. Bronner was crossed in the 1970s in Freiburg. And on the one hand, you're actually able to add fewer things in the vineyard, so you don't have to do much there because those grape varieties tend to be disease resistant. But on the other hand, you're obviously using something that was definitely man-made and isn't natural, you know? I can't really say much about the grape variety Bronner. I think this is the first time I tasted. When the winemaker saw that we purchased this wine, he called me and he told me that he thinks that this should be drinking really nicely right now. So, well, let's find out. So the wine is definitely golden. It's also definitely not clear. I mean, you can see little pieces of something floating around in the wine. I mean, like leaves and stuff, not like chunks of anything. But that's fine for me. I really don't mind whether the wine is slightly cloudy or not. On the nose, this is actually really interesting. It shows some sign of aging. So there's a little bit of baked apple character coming through, a little bit of honey. There's also pear flavor coming through. So it's quite nice and definitely not bad at all. So while it shows some signs of aging, it's not falling apart. The closure might also help. I think more natural wine producers should actually seal their wines under screw cap, because oftentimes it's easier to control the oxidation process when you put a screw cap on top of your bottles. But obviously many natural wine producers don't want to use screw caps because, again, they are man-made, but so is the bottle. So, well, on the palate, this is also quite interesting. I mean, it's not juicy. It's actually quite lean and very dry. The acidity is definitely present. There's also a little bit of bitterness. There's also good body. It's not a heavy wine at all. It's kind of a wine that is fresh and grippy, but also, has something to offer there. If I would blind taste this, I would definitely say this is a low intervention wine, just because of its cloudiness, but also because of the slight funkiness and wildness of the wine. But there are no flaws there. I mean, it's really well made. It's quite an interesting wine, quite a complex wine. And I mean, it's 6 years old, so it's still standing. I will rate this 88 points. I think it's really nice, really well made, the best Bronner I ever had. But yeah, it lacks a little bit of aromatic complexity and depth for me to go above 90 points. The next wine is the Agrippiotis Orange Natur. I don't know what the vintage is because it doesn't have a vintage. It doesn't say what the vintage is. This should be an orange wine. And I also don't really know whether the label is always like this or whether something leaked out of another bottle and kind of stained this label. I have no idea. So let's taste the stuff. On my last trip to Greece, I also tasted wines from Agrippiotis and I quite liked them. The winery is located at fairly high altitudes, between 450 and 1,000 meters above sea level. The grapes for this wine were grown at 850 meters on limestone soil, and the wine was then fermented for 21 days on the skins, and it was fermented and aged in amphoras. So both of those techniques are quite common. Fermentation on the skin is often done for white wines when it comes to natural wine. And the use of amphora is also fairly widespread amongst natural winemakers. I guess because amphoras are likely the original vessel for fermenting wine, so it allows them to feel closer with nature. In my opinion, especially if you don't want to use many sulfides, much sulfur in your wine, fermenting it on the skins might actually help, like fermenting the whites on the skins, because it just makes the wines a little bit more robust. And the wines are less likely to oxidize if you don't add sulfur at all, or if you just add very low levels of sulfides. So this is definitely quite interesting. It's kind of golden orange, cloudy, really cloudy. And yeah, this looks like natural wine, that's for sure. Whew. On the nose, it's wild. So I get bruised apple, clementines. There's a little bit of dustiness, some spice. So yeah, just a really funky wine. On the palate, this is kind of really nice. I mean, oftentimes orange wines can be a little too much, so they get too grippy and too rough. But this is actually juicy with a little bit of tannic bite, but not too much. So it's definitely wild, a little bit edgy, but it's also a wine that many people will enjoy, I think, because it's just approachable, juicy, and something different. So I'm going to rate this 89 points. I think this is a really well-made orange wine. And yeah, Good stuff. Talking about Greece really makes me want to go there and explore that country in more detail. And if I go, when I go, I will definitely take the sponsor of this video with me, NordVPN. NordVPN allows me to travel safely as I can browse the internet protected from surveillance, online threats, and censorship, even at train stations, airports, and hotels. NordVPN also allows me to access content from all around the world and enjoy fast internet speeds no matter where. On my trip to the Peloponnese, I might want to kick back and relax and watch some shows that are available in Germany, but are not available in Greece. With NordVPN, I can just change my virtual location and boom, I can watch my favorite shows just as if I was at home. With NordVPN's plans, all of my devices, my smartphone, tablet, computer, and laptop are protected under one account, ensuring that I'm safe no matter which one I use. NordVPN is offering a special deal for my viewers, including a 30-day money-back guarantee. So click on the link in the description in order to get a discount plus extra months and surf safer today. Thank you NordVPN for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back to the wines. So the next wine is the 2022 Kolfok Gruner Veltliner Vulkan Alte Reben from Austria. The winery was founded by Stefan Wellanschitz, and the word Kolfok apparently means free thinker or heretic. His family had been in the wine business already for a long time, so he wanted to kind of create something really unique, something really new, and that's why he started Kolfok. The grapes were grown on a mix of clay, schist, and loam soils. They were harvested by hand, and then the wine was fermented spontaneously. They used 500 to 600 liter wooden barrels, and the wine was left on the yeast for a long time until it was bottled unfined and unfiltered. They only added a small amount of sulfites apparently, but they don't really say how much sulfur is in that bottle, which is something that often really confuses me when it comes to natural wine. I mean, sulfites are such a big topic for that community, but most producers don't really want to say how much sulfites the wine contains, how much they added, all that kind of stuff could be easily printed on a label, but they just don't want to do it. Just to clarify, I don't really care whether it's 22 milligrams or 52 or 72, but yeah, you seem to care, so why not put it on the label? Okay, so the wine is kind of golden, but also cloudy, and there's a little bit of a bronze tinge there. So yeah, looks like a natural wine. So on the nose, it has a little bit of greenness. I mean, it smells of Granny Smith's apple, almost like the apple core. There's also a little bit of roasted, toasted notes. You almost get a flavor of baked walnuts, which is quite a nice type of flavor. So yeah, quite interesting, quite complex, I'd say. I would say this is kind of difficult to identify as a Gruner Veltliner in a blind tasting. I don't really get the same primary fruit character or the white pepper notes or anything like that. It's different, but it's really nice. On the palate, it's quite green, lean, really fresh. There's quite a lot of acidity there. It's fairly light, I would say. There's a little bit of creaminess coming from the yeast. So, but yeah, it's a bit too harsh, I would say. There's also gunflint flavor coming through, reminding me a bit of reduction. So this is complicated to rate because it's obviously a completely different style of wine. I also think it's really well made. There's quite a lot of interesting stuff going on there. I just think on the palate, it just comes across as too harsh. It could have a little bit more meat on those bones, could be a little bit richer, and I just don't think this harshness is, it's a bit too much. This might sound like I don't like this wine, but I do like it. I'm a little bit torn there, but I would rate it 89 points. I think it is really interesting, quite exciting, quite different, but it's not the most enjoyable wine. So I wouldn't really see myself drink the whole bottle here. The next wine is the 2023 Domaine de la Grande Cour, Clos de la Grande Cour from Fleurie in Beaujolais. The winery is certified organic and the wine was bottled, unfined and unfiltered. And I really wanted to include this because it's from Beaujolais. This is obviously where the natural wine movement started. And I always wondered why it started there and not somewhere else. I think it was because during that time, Beaujolais wine production was very industrial. Beaujolais Nouveau was still a big thing. And many producers probably wondered whether this is sustainable, whether that's actually what they want to do with their life, produce a wine that's kind of generic and simple and where it doesn't really matter whether you produce something authentic and substantial, but rather whether you just produce this simple and easygoing wine. But of course, there are many wine regions in the world that focus on the production of cheap and cheerful wine. So I don't really know why Beaujolais was the place where it all kind of started. That's interesting. On the cork, it actually says Liège issu de l'agriculture biologique, which means that the cork is actually organic. And I wonder, do organic wine producers need to use organic corks? Let me know down below in the comments. I really don't know. All right, this is definitely unfined and unfiltered. Look at that. I don't know whether you can see it, but it's really cloudy. On the nose, I get a lot of beautiful flavor, strawberries, cherries. There's a little bit of spice. This is quite nice. Just the same on the palate. I mean, this is juicy, rich, a little bit bitter. The tannins are kind of mellow. There's lots of freshness and liveliness there. It's definitely funky and wild, a little bit weird, a bit creamy because of all this stuff floating around in the wine. But really, really delicious. On the back of the palate, I definitely get some wildness, some weirdness. It's the taste of burnt hazelnuts. So it's not quite mousy, but there's a little bit of that character. But integrated in all of the rest, it actually adds to the wine a little bit. So this is really well made. And that's kind of the thing. It's well made. I mean, it's made by people and tastes like this because of those people. And that's not what natural is. Even though I think this actually follows the definition of natural wine more or less. But yeah, it's a really good wine. So I'm going to rate this 92 points. I think it's spot on. Good stuff, funky, wild, but also really fun. So the last wine is the 2024 Nikalas Marani Saperavi from Georgia. So the winery is located in Kakheti. It's a small family-run estate. And they say that they are working organically, but I don't see any certification here on the label. But they kind of, I guess they made this themselves. It looks like a kind of hand-painted drawing. The wine was fermented spontaneously in qvevri, those clay amphoras that are buried into the ground. And it was bottled, unfined and unfiltered, and no sulfites were added. And in this case, I actually know that the sulfites are 19 milligrams per liter. So that is because sulfites also are created by the process of fermentation. So you actually get naturally occurring sulfites as well, which confuses the whole discussion even more. I mean, if sulfites are a natural byproduct of the fermentation, are they not also a natural part of wine? Discuss down below. By the way, if you want to learn more about Georgia, its winemaking regions, its history, its winemaking traditions, then check out cellarclass.com, my e-learning platform where I launched a course on Georgia this year. All right. So if you do my course on Cellar Class, you'll learn that saperavi is a grape variety that produces really dark wines, but this seems to be a bit of an exception. I mean, it's definitely dark, but it's not that dark. I mean, it's dark, but it's not completely opaque. So that's a light colored saperavi. The nose is actually really nice. There's a flavor of ripe cherries, blackberries, a little bit of peppery spice, and even orange. The palate is interesting, I'd say. Is there residual sugar here? I mean, it has this kind of sweetness to it. I mean, it's not sweet. but it feels off dry, in my opinion. The tannins are grippy. There's a little bit of bitterness there. It's interesting. I mean, I couldn't be sure that it's actually off dry, but there's definitely some residual sugar in this wine, which would stress me out so much if I was the winemaker. I mean, if you don't add any sulfites to your wine and bottle wine with some residual sugar, it's not unlikely that it's going to re-ferment in bottle, and that will cause all kinds of problems. The acidity is actually moderate to low, and it's more of a lighter and more approachable style of saperavi. I think it lacks tension and texture on the palate. I would want something a little bit more structured, a little bit more clearly defined. This is a little, yeah, it's interesting, and it's definitely not bad, but yeah, I just would want something a little drier and fresher here. So I'm going to rate this wine 83 points. I think it's good. It's a good, juicy kind of red, but yeah, I'd love a little bit more punch. All right, that was it, the natural wine tasting. Some really interesting wines, but only one that really excited me, and the one from Beaujolais. The other ones were good to very good, but I don't necessarily know whether I need those wines in my life. These wines have something to add. The labels look different. They are cloudy and kind of wild in the glass. They have these funky flavors. But yeah, even for me, someone who really likes to go out there and try all different kinds of things, some of them are just a bit too much. But that said, if you want to drink natural wine, then keep drinking it. But maybe also try some conventional wines every now and then. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please like it down here. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. My question of the day is obviously, what is your favorite natural wine? Let me know down below, but whatever you do, stay thirsty.